Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. I normally try to avoid sort of political videos, but the Liberal Party of Canada keeps phoning me and asking me if I'm going to support Justin Trudeau. They don't seem to want to take no for an answer, but they also don't really want to hear why. So I guess this is a bit of a video response to that, because if you're going to keep asking me, well, eventually you're going to get my answer. The other thing is that I'm a criminal defense lawyer, so I'm going to be applying this a bit through a legal perspective, because one of the things that you do as a lawyer is you often have to look at lying witnesses. You have to cross-examine, and you have to be able to spot the little tells that give away that somebody isn't quite who they say they are. This often is little moments where somebody kind of accidentally reveals what they're really thinking, little turns of phrase. So there's a bunch of those in Justin Trudeau's career, and I really think it's important to have a look at those. I'll probably do another video. I'm still annoyed at how many calls they've been making. So I'll probably do another video just talking about some other issues that really annoy me. But this one is sort of looking at how I'd cross-examine Justin Trudeau, the little moments where he gives away what he's actually thinking. And one of the big ones is a video clip that I'm just going to play right here.
Prime Minister Trudeau, people in Grassy Narrows are suffering from mercury poisoning. You committed to addressing this crisis.
Thank you for being here. Thank you very much for your donation tonight. I really appreciate it.
This is, of course, from a guy who touts himself as the guy on reconciliation, and he says that clean water on reserves is really important to him. Now, the base hypocrisy here is obvious. The media commented on this right away. He, of course, apologized. But this is one of those moments where somebody is letting the mask slip and telling you what they really think. Now, he might say, oh, well, it was just a slip. But there's a few things here that I just pick up on and that I think are kind of loose threads that would be worth tugging at in a cross-examination. Because if you've got a witness who's made a statement like this that contradicts everything else they want to tell you, of course, they're going to try to wriggle off the hook. And so you need other things to sort of really emphasize what's going on. And the first thing I notice here is, this woman is there and she's shouting out, she's being removed at this point. And she's, security is dragging her out essentially. And so when he makes this comment, it's not a situation where he's trying to keep the attention of the crowd or anything like that. She's already being brought out. This is just a hurtful, spiteful comment as she's leaving. And he is playing to the crowd. The other thing that I notice here and that I think is really worth commenting on and that I don't think has gotten enough commentary is just how much laughter and applause he got. When Trudeau stands up in front of a room of his donors and mocks an Indigenous water rights activist, he gets laughs. He gets cheers. That really is, when the party says, hey, this is what matters to us, it's not just him who let his mask slip here, it's the whole party. This is something that should properly have been a really damaging moment because, as mentioned, this is one of those times when somebody just accidentally tells you who they are and what they're thinking. Obviously, we're going to have to talk about the blackface incidents here, and I say incidents because there's been more than one. Now, Trudeau's offered an apology for this, and when I look at that apology, the parallel that I draw as a criminal defense lawyer is to a sentencing. When somebody has pled guilty or been found guilty of an offense, quite often they'll apologize to the court, they'll take responsibility, and that's because a genuine statement of remorse can actually be quite mitigating. It can suggest that maybe less punishment is required. However, the court is always going to have to be alive to the possibility that an apology might be false. It might be self-serving, something where somebody isn't actually remorseful. They're just upset that they got caught and they don't want to be punished. So when I look at Trudeau's apology here, there's a few things that leap out and that kind of lead me to the self-serving conclusion. The first is the number of times it happened, because Trudeau initially said that it only happened twice. And then once a third instance was found, he said, oh, well, I'm not going to say how many times it happened. How are you taking responsibility if you're first being dishonest as to how many times it happened, and then when you get caught on that, you're just unwilling to provide any further details? You're not taking responsibility for something if you're not willing to be honest with us about it. The second is, is somebody taking genuine responsibility, or are they kind of deflecting? Are they offering excuses? And Trudeau offers a number of excuses. He says, oh, I was young. Well, sorry, man, you were 29 in one of those instances. 29 isn't super young. That's actually older than a lot of the electorate. Lots of people who are going to be voting for you and who we think, of as perfectly capable humans are younger than you. Somebody saying, hey, listen, I'm 29. You're expected to have figured out some kind of moral compass before 29. I'm sorry. And, oh, well, it was way back in 2001. We didn't know it was racist then. Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Your explanation when asked about gender parity in cabinet, when you said, oh, because it's 2015. Well, that equally applies to because it's 2001. I'm sorry, people did definitely know that blackface was unacceptable in 2001. And when you see that party where you're saying, hey, we didn't know it was racist, nobody else at that party is wearing the same kind of face paint. Nobody else is doing that. So you'd think that that would be kind of a moment where you go, I've had this idea for a costume, and now that I've gotten here, nobody else is doing the same thing. Maybe I'm a little concerned. Yeah, I mean, sorry, you're mugging for the camera in these pictures. I don't buy it. The other thing is that at least one of those instances is not just, defensible as a costume. It is shockingly racist because there's the one where you're wearing a banana shirt and sort of mugging. I'm sorry, dude. There is no way you did not know that that was racist. Take responsibility for it. Acknowledge that you did a bad thing and you knew it was that at the time. Now I've learned. I'm sorry, you had to have known at the time, or else the amount of ignorance that you're claiming here is shocking. Frankly, this element here is one that is really embarrassing as to how many people have been so quick to forgive him. Because in 2001, I can pretty much guarantee that if a 29-year-old lawyer walked into some sort of lawyer's party in full blackface, I would expect the Law Society's complaint line to have their voicemail filled up and unable to take more messages before that party was done. I don't buy this. This is, to me, just a purely self-serving apology. It doesn't pass the smell test. If I was a judge and somebody was coming up with this as a defense in sentencing and saying, this is why you should punish me less is because, here's this apology, I'd be saying, listen, it seems to me like you're trying to BS the court. I'm not going to give you any, I'm not going to shave any time off for that. So I, quite frankly, am not only shocked by the conduct and the apology, I'm shocked at how many people have been willing to defend this or, brush it under the rug. Lots of people who would have said that this was a moral red line for them decided that maybe their morality wasn't such, maybe it was a little more flexible than that. And frankly, that's not a bridge I'm willing to cross. So when the Liberal Party is calling and saying, why don't you support him? Because he's doing the indefensible. Yeah. One more? Yeah, let's do one more. So back in 2012, there was a charity boxing match between Trudeau and Brazeau, and it turns out this was a fairly carefully planned out event by Trudeau and the people around him. They saw this as an opportunity to elevate the political fortunes both of the Liberal Party, who were in a massive slump at the time, as well as to build Trudeau's own brand. So they were thinking of how best to organize this, and Trudeau later gave an interview with the Rolling Stone where he gave some insight into their thought process. He says, "It wasn't random," Trudeau says. "I wanted someone who would be a good foil, and we stumbled upon the scrappy, tough guy senator from an Indigenous community. He fit the bill, and it was a very nice counterpoint." Trudeau says this with the calculation of a CFO and a company budget markup session. "I saw it as the right kind of narrative, the right story to tell," he says. Keep in mind here, the plan is that they want to identify a conservative who they can beat up publicly and humiliate in order to elevate their own political standing. And one of the things he mentions as, a desirable characteristic is that Brazeau is Indigenous. That's pretty ugly. And of course, Trudeau has had to apologize about this one too. He spends a lot of his time apologizing. But the thing that strikes me is whenever I see politicians, just about every politician has moments when their sort of public facade cracks in some way. And often, even with politicians I disagree with strongly, often I can see that there's moments of compassion, of caring. They'll talk about some tragedy and you can hear, their voice breaking as it's too personal to them. You'll see that they'll step off script to go and help somebody or something along those lines. But with Trudeau, what I keep seeing is these moments of petty vindictiveness with the Indigenous water rights protesters. That's just pure cruelty. There's no need for that sort of insult as they're being escorted out. And often, where we see that mask cracking, what's coming up underneath that is racism. That's really concerning, particularly given that they've had a couple of MPs desert the Liberal Party and people of minority groups who have warned us and said, listen, the image he's presenting is not the image it's not who he is. This is a false front. So when I think about Trudeau and the notion of him being cross-examined on this public image of who he puts out, I don't think it can stand up. I think there are too many inconsistencies. I think there's too many places where he shows us what kind of person he is. And quite frankly, it's real ugly. So when I'm getting a call saying, can you support Justin Trudeau and, the Liberal Party, I go, well, I don't think he's a good person. I think he's actually a really bad person. I think this is really worrying to me. And quite frankly, I think that he is dragging other people down around him in terms of their moral standing. When you go and you see somebody who is doing blackface or making these kinds of racist comments or racist decisions, and you're willing to stand by them, that stains you too. Trudeau says, we planned this. When he was talking about the Brazeau event, he's talking about we. You got to think, who else is in the room hearing him talk like this and who's okay with that? That's a big question for me. So, yeah, just fundamentally on a question of, is this a person I can support, not just as leader, but for anything? The answer I come to is no. And you'll note I haven't even gotten to policy here. There's all sorts of policies I can, agree with or disagree with. But fundamentally, when we're talking about a leader, one of the things I want to know, even if it's somebody I disagree with on a lot of political aspects, is whose interests do they have at heart? Are they a genuinely caring and compassionate person? Do they care about other people? And I don't think that's true of Trudeau. I think he's really he's in this for Trudeau. And if you happen to be along for the ride, that's great. That's where the Liberal Party seems to be, is they're along for the ride and they're happy so long as he's doing good for them. But sorry, I'm not signing my name to any of that stuff. Anyway, those are just some thoughts. This is kind of a rant brought on by the fact that the Liberal Party just will not leave me alone on phone calls. And if you want my opinion, well, now you've got it. So I'm going to link that Rolling Stone article in the description below. You can check that out. Yeah. So thank you for watching. Please like this video. Please share it with your friends. Subscribe to see more content. I also want to thank my Patreon supporters. At the $50 level, Jonathan Wheeler, Jason Elliott, Canada's National Farms Association, Kyle Martin, Jean-Guy Toussaint, Ivo Nedev, the CCFR, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited and Marc-Olivier Demour. And at the $20 level, Raymond Del McKinnon, Matt Ward, Mark Whittington, Jane Babe and Luxor, Dale Nesbitt, Cameron Johnson, and Andrew Elsich. I also want to thank everyone at the $10 level who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you once again for watching. I hope this has armed you with knowledge, or at least, some insight into kind of my thinking on this one. And frankly, I don't see why this is not something that more people are cluing into. To me, this seems fairly obvious. I'm quite disappointed in a lot of people who I've seen be willing to defend and justify actions that I think are indefensible, that I think are things that I personally, for my own sense of morality and ethics, would not want to stand next to a person doing those things, regardless of how convenient it was, regardless of whether or not this improved my political standing. So when my local candidate comes and says, hey, I stand with Trudeau, do you? I kind of have to say, Ew. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you next time.